Today we look at financial statements as a source of information to learn about an organization. So particularly from an objective, as I said, we look at a source of information and then we look at a case study. We look at the University of Cambridge and we look at a specific financial statement called income statement to see what we learn about the university. So with that, I wanted to spend a minute thinking about why financial statements. Now, an organization has many different kind of stakeholders that you can sort of see here. And there is a need for communication and communicate it in a standardized way. You can obviously have all different kind of marketing communication, emails, and so on. But many stakeholders want to understand what your organization is doing financially and in numbers. And over a period of time, for a long time now, what was found is financial statements are the best way to objectively sort of communicate the organization's business, organization's work in numbers. And so that's the benefit of sort of financial statements as a medium of sort of communicating to a range of stakeholders objectively and in numbers. So I'm putting in different sources of other information that you typically would also use in your day-to-day research, as well as probably in even academic research. We learn about organizations or some organization we want to know from newspaper article, website, different sort of reports and so on. But when you talk about financial statements, those are sort of standardized reports. Those are produced basically in numbers, which tells you some of the financial information about the organization. So today, so the financial statements is mainly made up today in 3 different statements. One is known as statement of cash flows, and smaller organizations don't often have to prepare this statement of cash flows. Second is income statement, and the third is statement of financial position. Now, statement of cash flow, what it does, it's essentially, what's the bank account in the beginning of the year and what's the bank account balance in the end of the year. So it's like us in person, our salary is coming on and then we're spending on things and what's the remaining balance. So at an organization level, it's basically tracking the cash. What cash we have today in the beginning of the year, what cash we have at the end of the year, and basically organize that information, and that statement of cash flow. The second is income statement. The income statement do not take a cash view, and we'll come to that in a bit, but talks about what the incomes and expenses of the organization. Yeah, for an organization that's selling services and products, for University of Cambridge, for example, fees is an income. Then there are salaries and other building expenses, energy expenses. So all that throughout the year, again, income statements tells you throughout the year what are the incomes and expenses. How it is different from statement of cash flow is the difference in cash, because if a graduate student got admission into the university, the fee is recognized, like they are due to pay that fee. It might be paid by the student or the scholarship agency. It might be paid over a period of time in installments, but the fee, so the cash, the actual cash might come in at different points in time, but the income happens when the graduate student accepts a place and that fees is due, right? So there is a difference. That's the sort of difference between cash and income. For example, in cash flow, if an organization takes a loan from a bank, that's also a cash flow because cash comes in, but that's not an income or expense. So income statement deals with incomes and expenses and shows you whether the organization is sustainable, profitable, and so on. And the final one, statement of financial position, it's about assets and liabilities. For example, if we own a house, that's an asset, but if you have a mortgage on the back of the house, that's a liability. and the difference in the value of the house and what mortgage you have is known as equity. Basically, that's your ownership. So that's essentially at the organizational level what it shows on a particular date at the end of year. What is the asset? What is the liability and equity? So I'm throwing a lot of concepts here, in this slide, the same sort of saying the three statements: statement of financial position, income statement, and statement of cash flow. But it's showing again the concept that I said: income statement and statement of cash flows basically describes the activities throughout the year, while statement of financial position, which is the asset and liability, tells you the position at a certain date. Yeah, and all three of them are sort of linked. What's your starting statement of financial position is affected by what incomes and expenses you have during the year to show what's your statement of financial position at the end of the year. Now, I wanted to sort of introduce these topics. Obviously, we need to spend time understanding them to look into them practically, to understand them well. So what we'll do next is look at the income statement of the University of Cambridge to see what kind of information it gives us about University of Cambridge. And that should also provide you probably the sort of things why you look at another organization. If you are wanted to learn about an organization, why you should look at financial statement. So this one here, very numerical, is a income statement. Is an excerpt from the income statement of University of Cambridge for the year ended 31st July 2021. So that means the financial year it started at 1st August 2020 and ended on 31st July 2021. And in any sort of income statement you see for any organization, there are some sort of main areas. So you should be able to see total income, total expenditures for the year. In this case, what is the surplus? For commercial organizations, they will call it profit for the year. And what sort of taxes and before tax profit or surplus is there. Now, the delving into the details is where you start getting more information. Obviously, you can see total income. You can see University of Cambridge total income is just over £2 billion a year. So that gives you some information about the size of the organization. But when you look at further items, line items here, you can see how the university composition is. What is the most important part? For example, the second and third line here is about grants and research contracts, which appear to be the largest source of income for the university at around about £800 million a year. The second largest seems to be the examination and assessment services, which is actually something known as Cambridge Assessment, which is a subsidiary of University of Cambridge. And the third one is actually the tuition fees. And this could be entirely different from another university, which is probably more teaching focused university. So that gives you a very good insight into an organization, and any organization you ever come across, it's a very quick way to look at what that organization actually does and what's the, how it's composed of. Similarly, in the expenditures, we can see almost half the expenditure go into staff cost. So you can understand why staffing cost is such an important aspect from a university financial perspective. And then you can see there is a small surplus, and that's expected because the university is a not-for-profit institution. But at the same time, it needs to be sustainable. So it needs to have some, it's a good thing that it's making a small amount of money. Further down, there is a line here, which is quite a large item, 775 million. And that comes from the investments that the university has. So university has around £4 billion of investments. And last year, that investment had a very good return, but that's not realized. That's not cash. It's like held in shares and property and so on. So that's how I wanted to sort of take you through to show that how you can see, get into the insights from the organization. And you can see, if you actually go to the financial statement, you also see these notes, which can provide you further insights to specific areas. And it's always sort of available freely. All the financial statements for any organization is available freely, that you can find out generally through a Google search. And in this, I've just included a link to the University of Cambridge